All right, hello YouTube. Nice hot day here in eastern Oklahoma. This morning hasn't got really bad yet, so I'm grateful for that. I grew up in the great state of Wyoming, and completely different environment than here. So today I was going to talk about these generational generalities, and I didn't really want to get back into this again, but I've noticed anytime you mention anything regarding millennials, Gen X, boomers, every now and then you get people that come out of the woodwork and want to take your head for some of these generalities. And of course, I've noticed a lot of comments online. I'll see different channels and different people talking, and there seems to be this trend, especially among younger millennials and Gen Z, where they cannot differentiate between boomers and Gen X. And in fact, they think that we're identical. And it's like, and they have all these ridiculous notions, theories, and ideas about each generation. So, first of all, to clarify, simply no, we are not the same at all. And whatever problems you think that you younger generations, millennials or Gen Z have with boomers, you were fortunate not to grow up with them trying to raise you, or sort of raise you. We endured firsthand much of the negative qualities of that generation. The narcissism, their absenteeism in many areas, their lack of understanding, their unrelatability. They could not understand our challenges as we were going forward into a new world. They could not understand that. And but aside from that, I want to kind of make this video a little bit about how we overgeneralize things. Of course, we got to still put individual stories and individual people first before the generation. If you make broad generalized assumptions about people, you're missing out on, okay, what part of the world, country did they grow in? What economic circumstances did they live in? What psychological, sociological influences were on their parents? There's a lot going on than just the generation you grew up in. So, that being said, I gotta find my dog. There she is. Hey, Grayfin. Hey, get your happy ass over here. Stay here where I can see you. Get over here, dog. Come on. Get your ass over here. Sometimes I say to her, and sometimes I might say, how do I say it? I think in Ukrainian it's ni sobaka, Russian yet sobaka, I believe. Anyway, I teach a lot of people online around the world, so I have some interesting experiences there I'll talk about someday. Anyway, so when it comes to these generalities, I want to highlight what I think are some positives and negatives about each generation. Tendencies, observations of general ideas about them, right? So, for example, for the boomers, we can always talk about how they kind of had a silver spoon in their mouth, and there's the obvious stereotypes that we always have with boomers. But also, they grew up in a more high-trust society, right? They were given a high-trust society primarily by the silent generation, which I'm not going to go into today, I do have a critique of the silent generation, which is kind of taboo. And that is, we oftentimes say that they saved the world, right? We got to look at the state of the modern world and sometimes rethink that, see if that's really true or not. And that's controversial in and of itself. But now with boomers, they had a high-trust society. They could trust, at least in their minds, in hindsight maybe not so much, they could trust their overall culture, their sense of safety, belonging. There seems to be a united culture overall. They could watch their news and pretty much count on it not being a ton of propaganda. I'm not saying it didn't exist, but it wasn't so over the top. There wasn't extreme political agendas going on. They could work for a fair wage. They could put themselves through college on the side with part-time work. They had a lot of advantages, and that's not a bad or good thing. I mean, it's a good thing. Sometimes we might look at it and say, was it appreciated by them or not? Was it truly respected? I think in some cases it was. And it's not to say that some boomers didn't endure hardships. Many of them did. There was a lot of things that exist now as safety nets that did not exist for boomers. Okay, not all boomers were privileged narcissists who had it made, or later become that degenerate bunch of hippies who were countercultural to everything. And some of those hippies had some good points too. Let's not forget that. So to think that all boomers are basically robots is not really a fair assessment. It's not really, it's missing the nuance, and nuance is everything. If you take a look at, like, for example, a lot of modern Americans feel a sense of disconnect, dissatisfaction with our culture, our society, and I'm speaking from the American experience here. We tend to look at, like, things with a sense of skepticism and mistrust because we've seen these different institutions, whether it's education, media, entertainment, law enforcement, so many institutions betray us at so many levels. So we have something of an inherent mistrust. Keep an eye on my dogs here. And we think that's unique to us. Well, I'd have to ask you, how many of you people have family or friends, boomers, who are Vietnam veterans? Okay? Think about that for a second. You think that your world, that you've been betrayed, and many of you have been, talk about disillusionment. Many of these Vietnam vets have just been dismissed as their PTSD and made them unreasonable, and they're crazy and they can't fit in society. Well, you ever think that maybe they realized society was bullshit? That was their cue, that they are being thrown into the machines of war for profit and exploitation, and powerful, greedy, rich men are sending a generation of young men to war who aren't coming back, or who are coming back broken. Dogs, hey, get over here where I could see you. My little dog, Raven, is the biggest problem I have. While the other dogs tend to know where they're going, she will get herself into trouble. So anyhow, so as we're looking at boomers, think about it, the mistrust they have. They knew there was bullshit going on. I have a friend, his uncle fought in Vietnam. His group was nearly wiped out. He was in a pit of bodies, and he had to pretend to play dead as the Viet Cong were shooting the corpses around him. And it fucked him up. He had to lay there for a few hours, okay, and play dead. Fucked him up. You think that wouldn't fuck you up? It would fuck you up. And of course, he's talking about the modern society. He's like, hey, you got to watch out for these drones. They're going to be watching you. They're going to be monitoring you. They're going to be weaponized against you someday. And people laughed it off. And this is about 10, 15 years ago he said this. People laughed it off. And I'm like, look at the state of the world now and tell me he was wrong, right? What kind of dystopian future are we going towards? Okay, so that's just kind of my thing. I'm saying there's different kinds of boomers, all right? Let's just put it that way. Now, moving on to Gen X, I can talk about the different things Gen X did. We were the bridge between that sort of analog and world and the digital world. I can go on about the successes of Gen X. I'd like to kind of go over some of the false criticisms. I've heard people say things like, well, Gen X just puts their head down and they just go to work and they just do it. It's like, that's not really true. Yes, we worked hard, but they made us sound like drones. They made us sound more like boomers in the classical sense. And dog, Rafen, get over here. Hey, get out of those trees where I can see you, you little shit. Anyway, so no, they're wrong on that. As a matter of fact, to summarize Gen X, we were often told that we were slackers, that we were too rebellious. Now, why were we slackers, and why, in our teens especially, why were we considered rebellious slackers? Well, we basically raised ourselves, okay? Sometimes you go to some of us had good boomer parents who paid attention, made sure we had what we needed. Many of us went to our grandparents, the silent generation, for advice. You know, we oftentimes looked to them for wisdom if we had them available. But we were definitely rebellious because we got on our bikes, we met our friends, we got together and we had to solve our problems ourselves. We rarely had, example, I can remember being in a fight. It was more like a small riot. Me and about 5 of my friends versus about 15 to 20 of another neighborhood's friends. And, you know, weapons come out. We had sticks and boards and rakes and shovels and, you know, improvised weapons everywhere. And kids are brawling in the street with their bicycles and improvised weapons. And none of the boomers cared. They'd mow their lawn and look at us. Or some of them might yell, "Hey, you kids, stop it." And other kids say, "Hey, fuck you, man." You know, that kind of shit. They don't understand. They could not relate to that. Their sense of order, as long as their sense of order was not being disturbed, boomers just wanted to kind of forget about us, let us be. It had advantages and disadvantages to that. So we kind of developed our own sort of moral outlook on the world, which was, and I'm speaking again from the American experience, a true sense of freedom and just do what you want to do. We became very results orientated, okay? Now, we had this going on, and so we became rebellious, and when we entered the workforce, many of the boomers would look at us like we were just, "Hey, Raven, get over here. Get over here." This dog drives me crazy when I have her out here. "Hey, get over here now." I can't let her go towards the road because she's half beagle, half Ridgeback Hound, and she will get into trouble. They'll kill her on that road. So, anyway, we were considered hyper-aggressive, a bit unorthodox, and it made the boomers uncomfortable, you know. But we still had to work. We still had to play by their rules, so to speak. So many of us just played by their rules, which seems like we had our head down, but in reality, we're finding ways to make the system more efficient or overcome the system. That was our mindset. They did not like our aggressive, take no prisoners approach to it. So we always had to be out-of-the-box thinkers, creative thinkers, take care of yourself. We also sit back and we're quiet, let everything play. We didn't really care about all the talk and noise. So it's funny when some people now will say, "Hey, who let Gen X off the hook?" It's like, what are you talking about? Nobody let us off the hook. We're forgotten. We're ignored. We're the ones who are getting the heat for other people's problems, things that we didn't create or cause. Now, moving on to the millennials. Some of the biggest, most vocal critics, I'm about to really kind of slam the millennials a little bit here, have been millennials. And they seem to be, to me, they often are as narcissistic, and I hate throwing the word narcissist around because most people don't know what it means anymore, as the boomers. And here's why. It's kind of a different way, though. They had it kind of shitty, too. They have it shitty just like Gen Z does now when it comes to the economy and buying a house and what have you. But millennials, okay, the boomers had Gen X. We were the older siblings. We had the first marriages and things like that. And of course, due to the boomers' self-centered behavior, they were always partying. They'd go to the bars on a weekly basis, that kind of thing. The marriages fell apart. They were crushed. We had to figure out amongst our friends how to have some sort of stability, a second family, if you will. That was the older Gen X. Well, when our boomer parents got remarried, it was years later, they went from being absent parents and they had their new kids, the younger half siblings, whatever, who were the millennials. And they went from being absent parents for the older Gen X to now they were helicopter parents for millennials. And they wanted to make sure little Johnny and little Susie had every fucking possible thing. So they hovered over everything. They made them into soccer practice. This is when you see some of the older Gen X parents, as well as some of the boomers. You know, they were driving their fucking SUVs everywhere to soccer practice, that kind of shit. They became hyper involved in the neighborhoods. Like you see half those assholes that run the homeowners association and want to nitpick about your lawn. Yeah, those are those fucking people right there, right? And what do? They hovered around their kids, spoiled them. And if their kids showed any kind of, you know, I'm talking about the millennials, if they showed any kind of disagreement or energy that seemed rebellious, reminiscent of the older Gen X kids, put their ass on medication. Medicated the shit out of them. put them on medication. So then you wonder why a whole generation grows up and they seem to be degenerate drug addicts and alcoholics. Congratulations, you pumped your kids full of medicine since they were fucking 3. You know, and there you go, that's kind of your millennials. So they grew up kind of, I'd say more of the 90s, early 2000s, obviously. And by then the culture was shifting, it was changing. I mean, just take a look at the music. You want to see the promotion music? 80s had great variety of music, every kind of music. And by the time the 90s got around, most of that was what, grunge? Fucking a bunch of heroin addicts wearing fucking flannel in the Pacific Northwest. Fuck. No wonder Kurt Cobain did what he did. Fuck, I couldn't take that either. Or rap, holy shit, how terrible. All the music was bland, all sounded the same. Every now and then you might hear something good, but the music is indicative of how bland things got, how numb things got, how hopeless, and hence the nihilism of so many millennials as well. So of course, millennials do great things. They're still in the world. They're still changing things. I like their alternative perspectives. Sometimes it reminds us of we got to keep our finger on the pulse and that there's a lot of bullshit going on. But in many ways, millennials have a lot in common with boomers, and they don't know it. They don't want to admit it, but they have a lot in common with fucking boomers in the sense that they kind of got coddled a bit in a weird sort of fucked up way. Different, but similar. And and again, I'm not trying to generalize. Fast forward to Gen Z. Gen Z, oh shit. What I like about Gen Z is they tend to be very rebellious. I love the language. I love the language of Gen Z, how they're putting, okay, I love the word crash out, for example. People crashing out. I fucking love that. I like some of these little examples where they describe things. Gen Z is reminding me a little bit of Gen X. Again, kind of that little cycle, that little pattern. They're becoming somewhat rebellious. The problem is they don't understand the previous generations. For example, I heard one of them say, well, all Gen X does is party. They like to go party all the time. It's like, okay, let's clarify that. First of all, most Gen X does not like to party. But again, we got to go back to Gen X had to network. That was our way of networking. We were forerunners creating the internet, so to speak, or part of the internet and popularizing it. We were not able to access social media. We had no social media. We didn't even have fucking cell phones, really. So you gotta understand that Gen X, you got your friends together, and later when you were older, it became a party. It's like, hey, who's bringing the whiskey? Who's bringing the burgers? Who's bringing whatever? Now, so there was kind of a difference there. That was how you got together, made new friends, made new contacts. And as you got older, it became more sophisticated, not a keg party in the woods with your friends. It became a formal dinner party. You know, you're meeting new people, making business deals, arrangements, getting new jobs, relationships possibly, setting up with dates. It was more organic, more natural, more real. We were touching grass, okay? So we have the advantage of understanding that old world where we touch grass, we're in reality, and yet we can still take advantage of social media. Gen Z steeped in social media their whole lives in little isolated bubbles, okay? Isolated bubbles where their echo chambers make them feel very, very comfortable. They don't want to question their own thoughts. Many of them don't have their original thoughts. That's the problem with Gen Z. Many of them think that they are the most creative, rebellious, and kind of know-it-all generation, and yet many of them cannot formulate their own opinions or own thoughts legitimately. They just don't have that basis. It's kind of sad. So there's a lot of things about Gen Z I like. I kind of like the rebellious spirit. I like how they're taking on the new world. I like how they recognize the bullshit of this society. They can't afford homes, and when boomers are telling these fucking kids to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, what a load of shit. They had so many advantages these young kids just do not have. They fucking got it. They're struggling just to survive, and it's so unfair to them. They got fucked over, and they know it, and they're vocal about it, and that's where I like Gen Z. However, they make generalizations about the other generations that are not accurate. While they have mastered the tools of media, I love it when like the boomers get on like say other social media and they fall for the AI fucking fakery, and it's really obvious stupid shit, and the Gen Z's like, that's fake, that's bullshit, that's AI. And the boomer's like, no, it's not, it's a real cat. It's a real cat. It's a snowman. They made that. You know, this fucking boomers. Yeah, sorry to go on that, but just don't take my word for it. Take a look at some of the shit boomers say when they see the fake stuff and they think it's real. It's fucking crazy. So I don't know what's in store for Gen Z. I actually feel somewhat optimistic for them in the long term, but I think there's gonna be some struggles. They know the society is bullshit. They know at a young age they're fucked. They have to solve it. They have to overcome it. They're going to be the future.